So we're doing this in a new location today. We have, this is the Siebel Center for Design. You won't be able to see it if you're on Zoom, but their grand opening is this week. So if you can make it down to Southwest Campus near the stadium, you should visit and see what the building's like. It's very nice. They have a lot of open spaces and design spaces. And the image I'm showing you here is of North Campus, of engineering campus, but we want to be much more inclusive in our pursuits here. So as I'll tell you, we'll be having a number of talks over the series, covering a number of topics, having a diverse set of speakers, and hopefully we can include as many parts of campus as possible in this talk series. So a word about this image on the screen here. If you have a pair of 3D lenses, you'll be able to see this anaglyph more clearly. This is called an anaglyph. This is where if you look at them with your 3D glasses, you can see a 3D image. Things pop out at you from this image. So that's what that image is about. Okay, we'll get started. Okay, so all right, I'm going to get started now. We have a hybrid system here where we have people in the room and people on Zoom, and this talk is being recorded, so you'll be able to catch it later at a later date and in its entirety. If you'd like a copy of the slides, they're available at this link, tinyurl.com, Opensource Campus. And so I'm going to introduce this talk. It's going to be very high level, and I hope it fosters some discussion, and we can discuss this after the talk, of course. But the vision here is to make information technology across campus amenable to the open source ethos. And I'll talk about what that is, the open source ethos. It's basically taking everything on campus and using information technology, not only to make it accessible, but to make it open source. And so I'm going to tell you what open source is, and I'm going to go through some of the applications of information technology to different things of interest on campus. And then from there, I will introduce some, maybe talk a little bit about our sort of progression through the series, and then I'll conclude with some points of interest. So when I say open source, what do I mean? Now, when I say open source, I mean that it's software. So it's a piece of computer software for which the original source code is made freely available and may be redistributed and modified under a specific license. So if you're familiar with Linux, that's an open source platform. You have software, it has a license determining how you can use that. And most importantly, it enables a lot of different types of applications. So you can modify it to fit a number of different types of applications and contexts. And so it makes it very easy to apply it broadly to any system you would like. And of course, you can apply it to a campus, you can apply it to anywhere you want. It's free or libre in accordance with the free software definition. So there's an entire area of study on how to make software free. And this is in contrast to something like Microsoft Word or Zoom, which is closed and it's proprietary, and you can only use it for the purposes that they give you permission to use it for in the application. With open source software, you can modify it any way you wish. So there are a couple of components to open source. One is publicly available source code. So making the source code available on something like GitHub, or even open in terms of just downloading it from the web. There are a number of advantages to using GitHub we won't get into here. Another is free distribution and remixing. So open source code, importantly, you have to be able to remix and distribute it, meaning you would be able to combine it with other pieces of code, both from other packages or from your own authorship. And you're able to distribute that without any sort of restrictions or limited restrictions. Open source is also technology neutral, meaning that I can use an open source platform on any bit of technology I choose. And in some cases, that could mean the difference between an iPhone and an Android phone or a laptop. And an open source platform should be able to operate on all of those with minimal distinction. Finally, there's this issue of versioning and transparent control. And this is very important for open source. That means that you can create a version of the open source software and distribute it. And it should be traceable back to the original so that people can join that community of users and modify it without having to dig through a lot of technical details. And it should make it easier for them to sort of trace their changes and make updates to versions and things like that. So when I talk about this vision for an open source campus, what does this digital campus look like? Well, as we know, we have a campus and it's very complex. It's a highly complex system. And there are a lot of things going on, either in daily life or things that people are doing. So we have all sorts of issues here that I've listed with arrows. We have transportation, we have data security, we have libraries, we have the weather and the campus physical state. We have virtual worlds and streaming media. So like what we're doing here with Zoom is a campus function. We have campus events that happen all day, all over campus. We have social interactions, we have wellness, and we have this academic connective tissue, which is an interesting area I'm going to talk about a little bit later. But all of those things can be sort of turned into software at some level and then made open source so that people who say are interested in campus events can, participate, can modify the campus events, maybe add their own event. The same thing with, things like weather or campus physical state. They can make updates as they see them on the ground versus like some master system that, maybe records the weather or records some problem in a building. So there are a lot of ways you can modify these open source platforms, but it has to be holistic. It has to be a number of different functions from all over the campus. So this brings us to Rockwire, and this is kind of why we're here, because Rockwire is a platform or an architecture that allows us to build mobile applications that enable these kind of smart communities. As you saw on the previous slide, we have a lot of different functions in our community, which is campus, and we're able to build a mobile app that allows us to do multiple things to interact with that campus and to, basically manage our experience. So there are a couple of things that, Rockwire, you can build, you could build a lot of different things. Three examples of these are the Illinois app, the Safer Illinois app, which people are familiar with from managing COVID, and Safer Communities, which is something that's been applied more broadly across different campuses. But the point is that they're all built on this Rockwire platform. So you can, with the big message here is that you can leverage mobile apps to realize these smart, healthy communities. And so this is actually a separate campus initiative, the Smart Healthy Communities Initiative. And Rockwire, it's an open source software platform, and there's an initiative for smart, healthy communities, but there's also a lot of interdisciplinary collaboration here, which is required to realize this vision. The NCSA, for example, was involved in a lot of software engineering aspects of this. Also our partners here in the Siepel Center for Design. And this is a set of initiatives where we're looking to design, for design solutions for this platform or some of these apps that are being built. We have the Center for Social and Behavioral Sciences, and we'll have a talk from that group in week 3. And then Technology Services, which also, they do a lot of technical support and other types of enablement of this vision. So this is the Rockwire ecosystem. This is from the Rockwire white paper, and I'll provide a link to it at the end of the slides. This kind of shows the interdisciplinary nature of Rockwire. And you can see that there are a number of diverse groups, interest groups from across campus, and a number of different groups are involved in sort of realizing this vision. So we have our open source community, which I'm the manager of, and we're looking for people to contribute to the platform in various ways in this according to this open source ethos. We also have a very strong set of design values. So this is why the Center for Design is involved. We have local governance. So I'll talk later a little bit about governance and how that's a key part of this open source vision for the open source campus. We have local integration. So you can integrate local activities or local functions into your ecosystem. And we're definitely looking for people to suggest ways we can do that. We have different things like data security, vendor integrations, data sources, and privacy principles. And those are all very key to this vision. And finally, we have local business processes because we have people from outside the campus interacting with us in terms of business, in terms of vendors, and as well as students and all that. So it's a very rich ecosystem. And so if we look at this from the inside out, this is sort of a view of the architecture, how it sort of progresses from integrating a lot of these things on the campus to what you have maybe on your phone, which is a mobile app. If you have the Illinois app, you have this mobile app. And this mobile app has a number of different functionalities to it. I could go and I could look at a schedule, a bus schedule, an event schedule. I could manage my laundry if I live in a residence hall. I can do a number of things all in the same app. But this takes a lot of coordination. And so we have all of these different things on the bottom layer here, digital infrastructure, municipal resources, external integration partners, and information sources. So you have all these pieces of information that have to be integrated. And there are a lot of processes going on the campus, and we need to bring them into the app in some organized way so people can use it. So there's an integration layer that pulls data from multiple services and feeds the building blocks, which are these things that we use to organize the data. So we have these different building blocks for different types of data. Then we have capabilities, which are specific functions. So on top of those building blocks, say, for example, if you have a scheduling building block, you have a number of capabilities that can be built on top of that. You could have a bus schedule, for example, or a bus scheduling capability that would allow you, say, to find the nearest bus stop and the nearest bus to you. Then, you can have that for a number of different things from across campus, depending on your interests, depending on who you are, if you're a student or a staff member. And then finally, you have mobile apps. So the mobile app layer is this usability layer. This is the thing that you hold in your hand and you look at, and it looks very attractive. But it's really just all of this data organized, put into some specific set of functions, and then displayed for the user. And we're very interested in usability, and we're very interested in sort of, customizing these experiences for users. So this is all very important because people want to be able to use this with ease. They don't want to have to dig around for materials, and they want it to speak to them. So there are a couple of enabling technologies here. So as I mentioned before, we have the campus apps, and these are these apps that we can build on top of Rockwire. So this is an example of the Illinois app, these screenshots, and you can see that you have the front page with the block. Hello, how are you? Yeah. You have the front page with the different functionalities here. So you have events and dining, line item cache. And then you have things like the student guide, which is maybe one layer down, where you can, if you're a new student, you can get guidance to what's on campus. This one on the upper left is the Safer Illinois app. These are testing locations, so you can find the nearest testing location to you. This isn't in the Illinois app, but this is an Allied app that was specifically made for the pandemic. And then on the right, you have, from the student guide, you have a listing of sports teams. So you could actually, if you wanted to, say, go to a sporting event, see what's on, what the most recent sporting events are on your campus. And so you can do all of these things. The reason I show this is because this is how we build. We realize this vision of an open source campus. We build on this open source platform. We can build these types of apps, and there are many more possibilities here. I'm just giving you a little taste. This is the mobile infrastructure. So this also requires a back end, and it requires an infrastructure involving cloud computing and involving some edge, what they call edge compute functionality. And so once we have a campus app, what kinds of functionality can we place at the user fingertips? And so this is, our phones are very powerful computational nodes at the edge of this network. We're all networked together in this app. And then what we do with it, of course, can be realized either in very, straightforward ways, or we can build things like, we can interact with like the Internet of Things or other types of edge computing technologies, which we'll talk about later in the series. And then we can also build capabilities and talents in this Rockwire Ease into a basic framework for people to navigate. So I'm going to move from that. I'm going to talk about data governance, because this is something that is a very interesting topic, and we'd like to follow up on this in the future. And so in our open source community in particular, I would be interested in people's perspectives on this. This is a controversial issue in a lot of ways, and we do use a lot of data. We use personal data that's deaggregated, or that's anonymized, and we also use data from the campus. But it all needs to be governed in some meaningful way so that there aren't a lot of conflicts of interest, or that people feel like they're being taken advantage of. And so we have all these things that are involved in data governance. We have ownership of the data. Do you own your own data? Does the university own certain types of data, et cetera? You have accessibility. So how accessible is your data versus someone else's data? We have security issues, meaning that, if I have someone's grades, I don't want everyone to look at them. I want only the person who's authorized to look at them. We have, insights and knowledge and other types of issues that are very important to this. So how do we manage data that is available to our campus apps and mobile infrastructure? And it's really a balance of open information. So the information at some level has to be open to the app for people to access it without it being, stored away in a weird format, or, this is something that's been true since the beginning of the internet and how people have accessed things. But also we want verification. We want to make sure that only the people who need to look at that data, look at that data. And sometimes we just want to have we want to sort through the data to make sure that only, that you don't get everything, you get what you're interested in. So those are that's the balance of things we need to consider. But we also need governance, because we have this open source community, we have this digital community, and we need to be able to govern it so that people act in ways that we want them to. So they might act collectively, or they might have to act according to a set of processes and procedures. And with this type of platform, we can manage that, or we can at least push people to make better decisions than they otherwise would. So I'm going to talk now about some of these talks that are forthcoming. And now that I've established kind of what we're talking about, we're going to hear from a number of people in later weeks that will address some of these issues head on. So the first two talks deal with a general schema for an open source campus. So first is my talk here on the open source campus. And then next week, we're going to have Gina Mehta, who's a recent graduate of the iSchool, and she's going to be talking about campus apps in North America. So she did some research on looking across North America at different campuses and how they utilize this technology. Some of them use what we do, which are comprehensive apps, and some have specialized apps, but she's going to lay out that landscape for us. And then Isaac Galvan, who's the product owner of the Illinois app, is going to tell us a little bit about the Illinois app and give us a specific example of one of these campus apps. And so, and I put this in because, if you're interested in the open source aspect of Rockwire, we have an API. And if you're into building things, or if you're into exploring how to build things, you can download our API and you can get access to the source code at the level that we would like people to explore it at. And then we can start having conversations about how to build upon that. So this is open source. This is open for people to use right away. And we have an open source community where you can talk about these issues and work on contributing to make this better. The next one is that, so the next part of this is that you can also leverage the mobile app that builds representations of the open source campus. So we're interested in building sort of a representation of what our campus looks like. We're building these scheduling apps, we're building different types of monitoring apps. We have all the data, but we need to build some sort of structured representation. And so one of the ways this has been done, and this is what we call a capability, and this is a contribution that a group of students from electrical and computer engineering have made, and it's called the Converge Engine. And this is something that allows you to sort of, this is a plugin to the Illinois app, and this allows you to manage your data in different ways. It's a recommender system. There are a lot of different potentials for this. This is one capability that's been built and in place, but there are the opportunity for many more capabilities. So if you're interested in what a capability looks like, you can look at that, go to converge/engine.com and check out what they have. So then that makes it, this representation, we're going to have two people talking about what these might look like. Aside from the Converge Engine, Peter Ondish, who is at the Center for Behavioral and Social Sciences or social and behavioral sciences, he's going to talk about social science research in the Rockwire platform. So their goal there is to try to do survey research and other types of social science research using this platform. And of course, they have to adhere to a very high standard of data security for this and a very high standard of privacy, because social science research, you ask people questions and you don't want people to identify who's saying what and things like that, but you want to also be able to leverage a mobile device to collect the data. So he's going to tell us a lot about that. And then Robert Belson from Verizon is going to talk about unpacking 5G. And so he's going to talk about that, sort of those edge computing things that, we want to put into, we want to be able to represent our campus using these sorts of things. So this is beyond like just simple, text interfaces or, simple interactive interfaces. This goes well beyond that to interacting with like the Internet of Things and other things. So we'll hear from him then in, I think, week 4. And then so finally, we have these custom interfaces upon which we build these campus representations. And this is a higher level than just representations. This is people interacting with those representations. So this is a focus on human-computer interaction and human-human interaction. And for that, we have 2 people. We have Angela Recius, who's from the Orthogonal Research and Education Laboratory. And she's going to talk about something called data trusts. And data trusts are these organizations, these governance organizations that allow you to manage data, that people will enter into a data trust so that they can manage their personal data, and then it's, people don't have access to it. So we have on social media, for example, we have this issue of people having their data sold and other things like that. And so this is going to be sort of a new way of thinking about this. We'll also have Yun Huang from the iSchool, and she's going to be talking about designing conversational AI to provide guidance on skill training. So conversational AI is a fascinating area where they're using AI now in trying to mediate this human-human interaction or human-computer interaction with the device, where it might take voice inputs and it'll try to predict what you want to do, or there's some. Well, she's going to tell us a lot about the possibilities of it. So this more about these customized interfaces that are built upon the campus representations. It requires a lot. So when I talk about human-computer interaction and I talk about these campus representations, there are a number of things here to consider. We have roles for a number of people and to contribute to this. We are looking for software engineers to build campus representations themselves. We want to draw from designers and subject specialists to build talents. We want to have documentation type minded people or technical documentation type people to describe specifications for building these things. And we want people to understand what they need to build. And then we need maintainers and ethicists to engage in this governance step. So we need people who can maintain a lot of the, to coordinate a lot of these efforts and to say, well, should we be doing that, or how should we do that best for people? So there are a lot of roles for different types of people. And hopefully, some of you might be interested in one role or another, and you can come to me and we can talk about this, how best to use your talents. So data handling is another issue. So we have oversight, we have this ethical role, we have data trusts, we have the de-identification of data. And in the Safer Illinois app, we have a schema for this. As you can see on the left, there's an encryption schema and a de-identifying data schema and a way to control your privacy. So we've thought very long and hard about this process. And so, this is the sort of governance structure that we're using for our open source campus. And these are safeguards on how to manage personal data. This is speaking to the Safer Illinois application, but this can be considered more broadly. And this is the kind of governance structure that we're using. So this is an example of that. So we also have 2 other things in terms of engagement and design. One of these is looking at interdisciplinary education, and the challenge is in interdisciplinarity. And so interdisciplinarity involves learning new skills and mixing interdisciplinary or disciplinary expertise into new things. And of course, we use this to build this open source campus vision, but we also use this in terms of education and bringing people, new educational opportunities. And so one way we do this in the open source community is this reconfigurability of disciplinarity. And I like to think of this in terms of optimists and pessimists. Some people, think that this is impossible, and some people think this is great. But they all these little faces of expertise. And so, say I'm running an organization, and I want to have throughout the year, I'm going to plan to do 3 things, and I'm going to try to do them in an order. But I need to get people involved, and I need to make this happen. So I'm just using the example here of like a biology lab that wants to do write a paper, but they want to do it in a year. So how would they use this reconfigurability of expertise? So if they wanted, say, biological lab expertise for like 4 months of the year, they would go to this community and they would say, who has expertise and who is available? And so they would, people would, sign up, and then they'd start working on this project for about 4 months. But now I want to shift my gears to statistical modeling. So now I need another group of people for the next 4 months. And so now, because I have this pool of talent, and I have this pool of different people with different skills and disciplinary backgrounds, I can bring those people in for another 4 months. And then we can switch again to maybe the philosophy of science for a couple months, and then software engineering for the last few months. And then now we have a huge paper that we have a bunch of collaborators on. All we had to do is build a community of people who had different skills, bring them together in different ways, and build our thing. And so I'm just using this example as one example of how this might be done. This is more generally applicable to open source endeavors. And so you're drawing from different pools of expertise, bringing them together in short periods of time, and you're able to build this big thing. But you can also do this in terms of building an academic community. And so in the Orthogonal Research and Education Lab, we do this all the time with different types of academic tasks. We bring people together from different backgrounds, and we try to accomplish these types of tasks. So we have things like research administration, stream meetings, messaging channels, building a reading queue and literature review queue, and doing all these things. And we bring people, they're sort of fractional scholars, so they do things on the side, or they do things when they can get to it. And so if we can bring those people together using technology, we can build an interdisciplinary community of scholars and do things that scholars do, like write papers and do presentations. And so we can draw from people from all over the globe. We can be connected. Different continents can participate either synchronously or asynchronously, and we can connect different topics. So we have in the orthogonal lab, we have people doing all sorts of different topics, and they're connected in different ways. They might be connected for a certain project in one way, and then find out about someone doing something very different and connect in a different way later. So this gives us a lot of flexibility. The other part of engagement in design is human-human interaction. And this is where we have humans and AI all interacting. And there are a host of usability questions surrounding these relationships. One of them are virtual interactions between users and applications. These applications will have their own form of autonomous intelligence. And then this allows us to reinvent traditional academic relationships. So we have 2 people maybe in the same department or different departments, and we have an AI application that mediates that relationship, and they can, it improves their sort of their life and in the way they interact. So I'm going to end here with 3 different insights here from the slides that I've presented. In general, open source enables the creation of custom tools for various campus functions. So we've seen that with Rockwire. We've seen that with some of the other things I've talked about. We also know that open source enables freely modifiable education and research tools. So example, this might be like something like an open chemistry application where you can learn chemistry, you can contribute your own materials, you can mix different materials based on who's contributing and so forth. You can have something like open maps, where if I have a mapping system, I can put landmarks in a map, and I can share that with other users, so we can have a collective map of some place, and maybe places of interest or places where only one person knows about, but now a lot of people know about because we can share that freely. And then the open classroom, where if we're in a classroom, we can share notes, we can, but we don't want to share notes all the time. We don't want people to cheat on tests or anything. We just want them to, be able to help each other when it's needed, and it helps them to learn. And then finally, open source makes the digital campus less dependent on disciplinary boundaries and overall more resilient. A lot of these technologies we've talked about in very brief form, they sort of reshape disciplinary boundaries. They don't break them down completely. Maybe we wouldn't want to do that, but we would want to reshape them to benefit people more in certain times of need. And so it helps students, it helps faculty, and we want to make the campus more resilient. So we want to have technologies where we can manage resources more effectively and efficiently and manage things like pandemics to make sure that we can overcome these problems. So, okay, there we go. So in the Rockwire community, if you're interested in some of these topics, we have community calls that we've been doing. And we have things like the publication documentation interest group, which meets on and off on Wednesdays. We're kind of off right now, but we're trying to get that back going. We have an edge computing technology interest group on Fridays, and I'm trying to start an Illinois app interest group. So, these are groups where you would call in virtually and we talk about different topics, and we try to work out problems, and we try to get people involved in improving their own campus experience, or improving upon, say, the Illinois app or the Rockwire platform. So all those things are possible. If you're interested in interacting, contact me. There's my email for more information. And finally, I wanted to put in a plug for the rest of the series. So this is our series. We're in a physical location here, 1002 Siebel Center for Design. It's a brand new building. We're also virtual on Zoom, and the Zoom link goes out every week. We're going to be Wednesdays at 12 noon. And we're going to be covering a number of topics. We have all the speakers that I mentioned, plus at the end of the series on November 17th, we're going to have a special event on something called the Strat Lab, which is a lab that's going to be started in the Siebel Center, and it's going to focus on design and design with an eye towards campus apps and the Illinois app and things like that. So that'll be something you want to attend if you're interested in the design aspect of this. So in the case of the Strat Lab, we're going to move that to 1000, which is next door here. So it'll be at the same time. And the Strat Lab, we haven't really worked out how we're going to do this, but the basic question here is, how do you use design to make a contribution to our community? And by our community, that's the Rockwire community. And so we'll go over maybe some of the possibilities there and ways people can contribute, ideas. So this isn't just contributing code, this is contributing ideas and contributing, how do we enable this vision that I just showed? So if you're interested, you can join our Slack or our Discord, and we have a program or an onboarding guide here at this tiny link. And if you have any questions, you can contact me. And if you're interested in submitting feedback, we have a feedback form that you can access in the settings page of your Illinois app or your Safer Illinois app. But we're working on better ways of interacting with you and soliciting public feedback. So be on the lookout for that soon. Thank you for your attention. Anyone have any questions online or in the room? You can unmute yourself if you want. Okay, go ahead.
Campus, but is this something that you're looking into the public input, or are you looking also for students?
Well, we're looking. Okay, so we had a question about participation in our open source community. Is this something for students, or is it something for the general public? And the answer is all of the above. We're very interested in student engagement, of course, as part of their education. And I think open source, educating them in open source is very important because it's a part of our world now and they should understand it. But also I think just giving their input on these apps, giving their input on Rockwire, maybe how to improve it to make it better. And, there are opportunities here for people to participate, not just in terms of code, but in terms of getting their ideas implemented, perhaps, or other opportunities that might arise. So I definitely encourage people to participate in any way you find. If you have something to say, we want to hear about it. Yeah. We take a little bit different approach to open source. Usually people are focused on the code, but not necessarily on like some of the things that enable the code. And Joe?
At the end, you mentioned meeting of the group.
Yeah.
What
So the edge computing group is a group of people who are interested in these edge applications. So things on the edge of the application, like, like enabling better interaction with the stadium, for example, or maybe interaction with students. There are a number of different things we've discussed, and it's something that if people are interested in participating in, and if they have ideas for applications, and maybe after we get a talk on this, it can facilitate a little bit more conversation. But, yeah. Did we have any questions from the Zoom audience? You can put the question in chat if you want. Okay.
Is there a possibility that students can get credit of any kind for participating in some aspect of this?
Yes, we last semester, Gino, who's going to be giving a talk next week, she was able to do an iSchool internship. So she got 2 credits for her work. And this is something that the iSchool runs. So that's a possibility if you're an iSchool student. If you're not, you can still do independent study. If your unit agrees to say, we're going to sponsor you for this project. We have a number of things that we could propose. So if for the spring term, if people are interested, you can propose an idea. I think you have to fill out a form, and they make you sort of tell them what you're going to do. So, this is something that's trivial though, and don't let it stop you from participating. And you can earn credits, independent study credits or internship credits or whatever you're looking for. Okay. Do we have any other questions?
Is there a plan to have anybody else outside of this campus participate in open source development?
Yeah, we've had some people from the Verizon group, and we've talked about having people from the research park, which isn't really outside of the campus, but that's another mode of interaction with students. But we've also had people from different units outside of campus, is kind of, on the internet. But we'd also be very interested in looking for people from other campuses if they're interested in participating either as individuals or as a group. This is something that you can do virtually, so you don't necessarily need to be at Illinois to do this. If you know someone from another campus, put us in contact, and we can, work on, you can be a part of the community. Your ideas are welcome. So, we do a lot of stuff with Illinois, and we have a lot of reference to Illinois, but this is a set of issues that's very broad, and we're looking to expand Rockwire beyond the University of Illinois. So this is a perfect opportunity for people, to have ideas. Okay, we can, this is a very general sort of college campus idea. Well, we're very interested in that because we're interested in expanding beyond Illinois and, sort of doing things that are very general in nature. So if you know people from outside of Illinois, if you're from even another country, you're welcome to participate in our open source community. Okay. Do we have any other questions online on Zoom? You can unmute yourself or put it in the chat if you'd like. Did someone say something? I think we're having technical difficulties with the sound, but if you could put your message in the chat, that would be good.
Dr. Alicia, this is
Okay,
Ali
this is
Naqvi
Ali
from
Naqvi.
Verizon. Can you hear me?
Naqvi from, okay. I'm not seeing the message or the chat message. I don't know if you're done or not. Oh, there we go. Okay, thank you. Dr. Alicea, this is Ali from Verizon. To clarify, what is the scope of Edge Compute Group? As you know, we have our mobile edge solutions anyways. Thanks. So I'm trying to encourage people to think more broadly about edge compute and maybe bring in some people from the campus here. We've been talking to people in the Verizon group about different things that they're doing. We'd like to see what people, we'd like to actually get feedback on this from people on campus, how they might apply it to different types of places on campus here. Or I know we've talked to Eurosh from tech services a lot, so he's provided some good feedback. So I would like to sort of continue that conversation and invite more people to be a part of it. Do we have other questions? If you're on Zoom, just type them in the chat because I don't think I can hear very well.
Hello, Dr. Alicia. Can you hear me? Dr. Alicia?
Yeah, there we go. Okay, Jeff said, Jeff Mahafa was also from Verizon, says looking forward to supporting all within Rockwire. Okay. Yeah, this is, I mean, you know, and again, if I've shown kind of a lot of cards here. So if people are interested in contributing in a specific way, you know, we may need to narrow down that focus to a specific area. So, you know, if you have expertise, please bring your expertise to the community. This is also an opportunity for people to gain new areas of expertise. So if you're contributing as a coder and you're interested in maybe some other thing that's going on, or vice versa, if you're someone who like is really interested in a certain area, you know, in design, and you want to learn a little bit about open source code, there are opportunities to do that. And you can do this without having to make a huge investment in changing your major. You just simply show up to a meeting and, you know, learn a little bit about it. You don't necessarily get a credential, but it broadens your perspectives.
Are there credentials that people earn?
Well, currently we don't have credentials that you can earn, but we'd certainly be interested if there's some way to assign micro-credentials. This is something that maybe we'd be looking into. A lot of open source communities do this because, you know, they want people to know like a certain programming language, and then they have, you know, they have to meet certain standards to achieve this. So, you know, a micro-credential is something where you might take like a short course and then get a credential. And then you can take that, you can put that on LinkedIn, advertise that to employers, so it's not a college degree, it's not a new degree, but it's something that tells employers, I know this very specialized skill. So we may be doing this in the future where we offer micro-credentials in different topical areas that no one else offers. And so this is very, I think in general, like things in this open source space, they just don't offer the credentials because it's a new thing. And so if you're looking to learn these skills and really be attractive to employers down the road, this is a very good opportunity to participate. Okay, Abhijit from Verizon said, how do we get GitHub access to Rockwire source code? So back in one of the earlier slides, I think it talked about, see if I can get to the slides here. I talked about the API. And so our API is available on GitHub. Here it is. This is the Rockwire Building Blocks API. And this will allow you to access the part of the source code that we want you to touch. We're always doing like development builds and things, so we don't, but this should give you some indication of where we are. So you can explore this code. You have to request the key, but we can do that. We can set you up with that. You can contact us through GitHub and we can get you a key. But this is something that allows you to explore, work with some of the code and figure out, how you might want to use this. I have to say, we're not, this isn't highly accessible, as like most open source software. It ranges from very highly accessible to not all accessible. I think we're probably somewhere, in the low middle of that. But I think, you can probably, if you're well experienced in programming, kind of figure out, what you might want to do with it. And then we can work with you to realize some of these things. But we're working on more documentation and working on making this more accessible all the time. So please don't get discouraged. We're here to help. Any additional questions or? Okay, so I think we're done for today. Thank you for attending, everyone. And if you have any additional questions, contact me. And I have put my email address here at the bottom of the presentation. So, please contact me at that address or visit us through our onboarding guide. And stay safe. Thank you for attending. And we'll have another talk next week with Ginal Mehta and Isaac Galvan. Thank you.